Hello out there everyone. Today we're going to take a look at my Criterion collection, and as you can see here, it's consisting mostly of their Blu-rays. I've got a few 4Ks and a couple DVDs, but let's go ahead and jump right in, shall we? This is Steven Soderbergh's documentary on Spalding Gray, who is a famous monologuist who sadly was believed to have committed suicide, jumped off the Staten Island ferry back in the 90s. Really interesting and talented guy, a monologuist who kind of pioneered that format, just sitting at a table and basically talking about his life, and just had a remarkable gift to gab, funny, insightful. Highly recommend this documentary, but if you are interested in its subject, I would recommend movies like Swimming to Cambodia and Monster in a Box, among others. Good flick. Then there's the BBS story with the three movies that I really enjoy, which are The Last Picture Show, Easy Rider, and Five Easy Pieces. It's also got a couple of other movies here that basically feature Jack Nicholson in many of them. And Jack is terrific. I just want to point out that, like, Five Easy Pieces, I think, is probably Jack Nicholson's best performance. He's nothing short of just phenomenal in that film. And The Last Picture Show, while it doesn't star Jack, is a really interesting drama starring an impossibly young Jeff Bridges and Sybil Shepherd. Then we have The Badlands, or just Badlands, Terrence Malick movie, his first, starring Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek. I would argue that's Terrence Malick's best film. It's quite good and narratively is coherent. Then you've got The Benjamin Button Show here, Adventures of Benjamin Button. Interesting movie, doesn't totally work, but one that I think is definitely worth checking out. I'm not sure it deserves a Criterion release, but I picked it up for like a couple bucks, and I enjoy it. Then we've got Being John Malkovich, which of course was directed by Spike Jonze and written by Charlie Kaufman. And I think the alchemy made between those two gentlemen is very impressive. I think this film and adaptation in particular are just two of the most insightful films about the human condition. Just terrific movies. Hal Ashby's Being There, starring Peter Sellers in, I believe, his final role. A very interesting movie. It's definitely the sort of proto-Forrest Gump film, largely on the grounds of the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, which of course was supposed to be a place just outside of DC, which I always thought was interesting. But it's a very funny and touching movie. Then we have the original Blob, starring Steve McQueen, looking 40, playing a high school student. I mean, it's a good movie, though. I enjoy it for what it is. Blood Simple, Coen Brothers, perhaps one of their best films. This movie sits nicely alongside No Country for Old Men as, I think, two of their best. Emmett Walsh is in it, and Dan Hedaya, very young Frances McDormand. Highly recommend this movie. It's beautifully lensed and just dripping with atmosphere. Then we've got Brian De Palma's Blowout, starring John Travolta, Nancy Allen, and John Lithgow. Terrific thriller, interesting story. I think it's one of De Palma's best, certainly one of Travolta's best. Then we have David Lynch's Blue Velvet, Frank Booth, played by Dennis Hopper. Incredibly creepy character. Then we've got the Burden of Dreams, the documentary on the filming of Fitzcarraldo, and of course Werner Herzog directed Fitzcarraldo, so of course this is not a Werner Herzog film. The subject is Werner Herzog and his production efforts on Fitzcarraldo, and fabulous documentary, very interesting. And I went ahead and slipped in Fitzcarraldo here. It's technically a Scream Factory, Shout Factory release. The movie is very interesting. Stars Jason Robards. Actually, I misspoke. I believe he was in the original one and was replaced by Klaus Kinski. Klaus Kinski is terrific in the part, and the movie is just, it's crazy. And it's based on a true story. I'll leave it at that. Carnival of Souls, one of the most impressive horror films, certainly a seminal picture, not unlike Night of the Living Dead. I think that movies like The Sixth Sense owe a huge debt of gratitude to this film. Highly recommended. And Steven Soderbergh's Che, two-picture biopic starring Benicio del Toro. Very, very well done and historically pretty accurate. John Lee Anderson, the guy who wrote what is arguably the definitive biography on Che, was behind the production of the film, and I think he lent a sense of verisimilitude and historical accuracy that really gives the film a big boost. Then we have Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee. I think this is probably his best movie. Terrific cast, love it. Gus Fring, none other than Chicken Man, is in this movie. I think he plays the guy bugging out. Very interesting character, not at all like his buttoned-up stoic character on Breaking Bad. Then we have Dead Man, Jim Jarmusch film, very good film, black and white western, beautifully lensed, Johnny Depp, and a cast of other really interesting character actors. Defending Your Life, Albert Brooks, sort of Woody Allen without all the crazy baggage. A little goes a long way with Albert Brooks, but I still think he's made some funny movies, and that's one of them. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Terry Gilliam, terrific film, one of his better. I thought Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro did a great job. Then we've got The Grand Budapest Hotel. This is, I would argue, Wes Anderson's best film. Ralph Fiennes, he just killed it. The Killing, incidentally, Stanley Kubrick, 1950s film noir, really, really good flick. Then we've got La Jetée, basically the progenitor for 12 Monkeys. It's a fantastic flick, it's experimental, really interesting. Then we've got The Last Temptation of Christ, Martin Scorsese, starring Willem Dafoe playing Jesus, and David Bowie stops in to play Pontius Pilate. Local Hero, really interesting film starring, I want to say, Burt Lancaster and some others. I think this movie is just a fascinating character study. Definitely worth checking out. Lost in America, another Albert Brooks film, very funny. Julie Haggerty, I believe, is in it, from Airplane. She's really funny too. I enjoy Defending Your Life and Lost in America. I think are two of Albert Brooks' best. Matewan, John Sayles, written film, directed film, starring a very young Chris Cooper, and I want to say James Earl Jones, based on true story about a mining town in West Virginia. Pretty fascinating and sad. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Robert Altman Western starring Warren Beatty and Julie Christie. Very, very good film. Highly recommended. I think it's one of Altman's best, and certainly one of Warren Beatty's best. Then we've got Mulholland Drive, David Lynch, probably his best movie. Looks great on Blu-ray. I don't have the 4K, but the Blu-ray looks amazing. My Dinner with Andre, a movie I didn't really ever have a desire to see, nor even really appreciate it until I got into my 40s and I sat down and watched it, and I realized why people raved about it so much. Fascinating, fascinating film. Naked Lunch, David Cronenberg, really strange, based on a William S. Burroughs novel that's pretty much unfilmable. David Cronenberg did his level best to put that thing to film, and I think he did a pretty good job. Peter Weller's great, but it's crazy. Nashville, another Robert Altman film. This is one of the first intersecting stories movie. I mean, of course, he did it also with MASH, but I think Nashville's a really good flick. All-star cast, fascinating experiment. Night of the Living Dead, George A. Romero, excellent, and that transfer is amazing. I don't have the 4K, but the Blu-ray looks pretty impressive. Tyrone Power in Nightmare Alley, very interesting film noir. I've got the Guillermo del Toro film as well in 4K, and story's fascinating, based on William, I want to say, oh goodness, what's his name? Gresham novel, basically about carny life, fascinating tale. Then we've got Paris, Texas, Wim Wenders, Harry Dean Stanton, fabulous flick. Incidentally, there's a movie he did, I think one of his last, is called Lucky, and I like to think of that as the sequel to that, unofficially. Then we've got Passion, Joan of Arc, famous 1920s silent film, directed by Dreyer, same guy that did Vampire, which I also own. And beautiful, beautiful film, and incredibly illustrative of the power of the close-up. Definitely recommend it. Peter Weir, Picnic at Hanging Rock. Big fan of Peter Weir. He needs to have more films in the Criterion collection. Player, another Robert Altman film. It cleaned up at the Oscars back in '92, I want to say. The cast was crazy good, as is often the case with Altman. Then we've got The Princess Bride. We've got the Kotze trilogy, which is an interesting anthropological documentary, 3 parts, really beautiful looking movies. Repo Man, Alex Cox, crazy early 80s LA punk film. Then we've got A Room with a View, Merchant Ivory, starring the inimitable Daniel Day-Lewis. We've got Rumblefish, Francis Ford Coppola. He basically kept about half of his staff and production team around after filming The Outsiders, and did another S.C. Hinton story. Beautifully shot, by the way. I think it's probably better than The Outsiders. Then this is a Todd Haynes film, I want to say, Safe, Julianne Moore, about a woman who starts to go basically mad. She's just completely obsessed with allergens and sickness, and just goes bonkers. Then John Frankenheimer's Seconds, starring Rock Hudson. Really good movie. Terrifying, to be honest, but excellent. Steven Soderbergh, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, starring James Spader. Really good flick. Then we've got another Altman film, Shortcuts. Probably one of the most impressive casts ever assembled for a movie. And we have Silence of the Lambs. Fantastic transfer. I have not seen the 4K by Kino Lorber, but I think the Blu-ray by Criterion looks pretty impressive. Then coming down here, we've got Slacker, Richard Linklater, wonderful time capsule of Austin, Texas, circa 1988. That's not how Austin looks now, that's for sure. Then we have Tarkovsky's Stalker, a movie that's beautiful, but boring as hell. True Stories, eclectic musical starring David Byrne and John Goodman. Really interesting flick. Spalding Gray is in this. Stranger Than Paradise, another Jim Jarmusch film starring, goodness, what's that gentleman's name? Laurie from The Lounge Lizards. Very kind of strange, unusual looking face. Pretty good actor though. Thief, James Caan, directed by Michael Mann, one of his best. Two Lane Blacktop, a film I only recently saw for the first time, and I can see why Linklater loves it. I thought this movie was terrific and sits nicely alongside Easy Rider, but I think might even be better. Then we have Vampire, another Carl Dreyer film. Technically not a silent film. It's actually got a soundtrack, but very, very, very faint, but fascinating vampire film. Then we have Walkabout, and this is Nicholas Roeg, who I believe is married to Teresa Russell. And fascinating story about a family that gets stranded in the outback of Australia. And I remember seeing this as a kid and kind of forgetting about it. And then when I realized it was in the Criterion collection, I picked it up. The Blu-ray looks amazing. It's beautifully shot. And haunting and sad. Watership Down. I mean, who doesn't like this? I mean, obviously, it traumatized many a many a child rather, upon its release, and still does so to this day. But I think it's a great flick. Then we've got Paul Dano's movie Wildlife, starring I believe Carey Mulligan and Jake Gyllenhaal. Really good flick. Bill Camp is in it. He has a small part. Then we have Wings of Desire, which of course is another Wim Wenders movie, and just a beautiful film, very touching, and about 100 times better than a Nicolas Cage flick. And I love Nick Cage, but that Hollywood version of it was horrible. Then lastly, we have For All Mankind, a documentary by Al Reinert about the space program, with a delicious score by Brian Eno that's just transcendental. Terrific flick. So there you have it, my Criterion collection. I hope folks out there perhaps might be inspired by this. That's sort of how I've built my collections, is just watching other people show theirs and talk about the films that they love. And it kind of provided some real inspiration for me, I know. So on that note, please do take care out there, everyone. Stay safe, be kind, maybe leave a comment, and by all means, keep watching good cinema.